I'm Pastor Tom, and welcome to the Sunday Sermon.
You got to move. You gotta move. You got to move. You got to move. You got to move, child. You got to move. You gotta move. 'Cause when the Lord... All right, I'm going to read to you from the book of Joshua, the 20th chapter. I'm going to read verses 1 through 6 and then verse 9. Adonai spoke... Okay, Adonai, right? So in the Old Testament, the name of God appears like 4,000 times. But it became a custom not to say the name of God, but to do a substitution. Now, sometimes the substitutions were weird, and the heavens, and the blessed one, and like that kind of stuff. But the most common substitution was to simply substitute a word that means sovereign, ruler, Lord, something like that. In Hebrew, that word is Adonai. When I'm reading an English translation, if I use Lord, which is what you often find in an English translation, by the way, the typesetting will be different. But you can't hear the typesetting if I'm speaking it aloud. And if I just say the word Lord, you can't hear that, it's like, is that Lord, as in the underlying Hebrew word, is the Hebrew word that means Lord? Or is the underlying Hebrew word the word that the name of God? So by substituting Adonai, following a deep old tradition, but it also alerts you to those points in the text where the name of God is actually being spoken. Okay, so that's what that is. So Adonai is Hebrew, and it means sovereign or Lord or something like that. Then Adonai spoke to Joshua, saying, say this to the Israelites, designate the cities of refuge of which I spoke to you through Moses, so that anyone who commits manslaughter, that is, kills someone else unintentionally, without any premeditation, may flee there, and they shall become your refuge from the avenger of blood. And they shall flee to one of these cities, and shall stand at the entrance of the city, and state their case in the hearing of the elders of that city, and they shall take them into the city, and give them a place, so that they may dwell there among them. And if the blood avenger pursues, then they shall not deliver any who have committed a homicide unintentionally into the hands of the avenger of blood, on account of the fact that the death was without premeditation, was not motivated by hate. So they shall dwell in that city until they stand judgment before the congregation, and then until the death of the one who is high priest in those days. After this, that individual shall return to their own city, to their own house, to the city from which they have fled. So they appointed 6 cities for the Israelites and for any stranger who sojourned among them, that whoever kills any person unintentionally may flee there and not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until there's been a proper trial. We have to understand something about the ancient world that actually explains a few things about the modern world. In the ancient world, there was so much connected to ideas around honor, and honor required vengeance. If you were besmirched, I mean, just think of somebody. You have dishonored me, sir. Smack. Meet me at dawn for a duel. Right? There was always like violence involved as a way of restoring honor. And this is an old story, and it went back. Only the way it worked was there would be this murderous killing. And very often, the way blood vengeance worked was, we not only kill you because you were responsible for the death of our loved one, but we're going to just wipe out your whole family too. Because it was often way over the top. And there are examples of that in the scripture. And particularly if you're reading in Genesis and you pay attention to the crazy two, the 12 sons of Jacob, right? The 2 crazy ones are Levi and Simeon. Pay attention to how they act, and you see them behaving in these wildly inappropriate, crazy, over-the-top ways. And then this kind of familiar vengeance, these honor vengeances, these honor killings, this stuff can be passed from generation to generation. So what's the story of the Hatfields and McCoys? There was a death which was supposedly accidental. One side, I think, I don't remember the exact details, but right, somebody dies, and so the other side, the other family's like, "Oh, you killed our person," so they kill one of them, and then pretty soon, well, you killed ours, so now we're going to kill yours, and it just goes back, and it's never ending. It's never ending. And if a society has this kind of thinking, they can't get over it. How do they get over it? They don't have a mechanism for getting over it other than killing. So every killing has to be matched by another killing. How do you get over that? And I hear people saying, well, why don't they just make peace in the Middle East? That's why, because they would be dishonored. And they can't bear that. And no one has given them a better way, a different solution to the problem. And this goes way, way back. And it's not just in the Mideast. I mean, like I say, the Hatfields and McCoys, but it's elsewhere as well. And these honor killings, these vengeances, these feuds can go on for generations. So that's the environment in which the law is being spoken. And there's this weird thing about how the law comes around sometimes. So by the law, I mean the stuff we read in the first 5 books of the Bible, but especially in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers. In fact, the law about the city of refuge is found in Numbers 35. And these laws, you'd think that there'd be the obvious solution, like God just come down and go, don't do that, it's wrong. Right? Stop avenging each other, it's wrong. Let the law take its due course. But these are such deep cultural ideas that God could shout that from the heavens till God was blue in the face. Maybe that's why the sky is that color. But everyone would completely ignore it. They would find a way around it because it's such a deeply ingrained cultural idea. So what the law does is take a different tack. There's a couple of other examples I can find of laws that take this approach, where there's some kind of behavior that is so outrageous, and you're like, why doesn't God just say, no, this is wrong? And instead, what you see is God, like the law, mitigating somehow, or like adjusting, or okay, we're not going to be able to stop you from doing this. However, here's this thing we're introducing to kind of pull it slightly away from the edges of the cliff. And so the cities of refuge are that. The idea is if a person is guilty of committing some kind of unintentional manslaughter, and the law kind of struggles, in a few words, to define what that is, that no premeditation, that there can't be hate in the person's heart, like what I'm gonna do is I hate you, so I'm going to taunt you until you attack me, and then I can claim self-defense. None of that stuff. It specifies if the person, you can tell if it's a murder if they're using an implement made of iron. Apparently, there weren't a lot of those around, and so it would be like, yeah, it's not. I just reached for what was handy to defend myself, but they had a weapon with them or something that they had to kind of go out of their way to have in their possession. It's just like, yeah, you can kind of tell when somebody intended it and when it was just an accident. So accident, like we got arguing, you pushed me, I pushed you back, you tripped and fell, hit your head and died. Or you were attacking me and I was trying to defend myself and I just grabbed what was a hand. It just happened to be this thing and I smacked you in the head and you died. Or I was drunk riding my ox cart and I was drunk ox cart driving and you died. And so in order to make sure that there was at least a chance for some kind of appropriate use of the judicial system, the law establishes 6 cities. And all you have to do is get there. And when you get there, you get let in, you make your case. If it sounds reasonable, they'll let you in the door. And then they will assemble a court and they will actually hold a trial to determine if it was intentional or if it was unintentional. And if it was intentional, they toss you out. And then the blood avenger can do whatever they want. They'll wreak their vengeance however they see fit. If it's determined to be unintentional, then you have to stay in the city. You're basically under house arrest in that city. And there's an ending point on it. It's not for X number of years. It's until the high priest dies. And then you can go home again. Of course, I'm not sure that would solve the problem to be honest, because the high priest died. I'm going to go home now. And so I go home, and the blood vengeance, I've been waiting the last 15 years to kill you. So there's no guarantee that that's going to be a real great solution. But at least the idea was to prevent it from being a permanent, unending sentence of confinement within a city, what we would call house arrest or something like that. So, by the way, they weren't stuck in the house. They could go anywhere in the city. They just couldn't leave the city. And the rule was, if you walked out of the city, your life's in your own hands, man. If they kill you, too bad. And the law applied not only to Israelites, but to immigrants as well, right? That the term is sojourners in the land. So that's anyone who's in the land for any reason. They don't make distinction here. So if people are wandering in from somewhere else and they're living there for a while, they count. Because they're not thinking, we think in terms of national citizenship, national identity. They think in terms of familial relationships. So an Israelite is part of this larger family group, this tribal group made up of the descendants of Abraham. And then a sojourner could be from any other people group at all. They just happen to wander in, and now they're living there. And so the law specifies, and this is not the only place where we see this, the law actually, but the law says you're supposed to treat, this is in Leviticus, we see you're supposed to treat the stranger, the sojourner, the immigrant, to use our modern term, as one of yours, as if they were just a fellow Israelite. Same rules apply. By the way, we see the same thing in our Constitution. I don't know if you knew this. If you read the Constitution, there are some rights that are explicitly for citizens only. And those are actually described as for citizens. They actually would say that, you got to be a citizen for that. But then there are other places where it just says any person living within the territory of the United States and subject to its laws. And then it will enumerate a right. So much of the Constitution, our Constitution actually has some of that same idea in it, that what we consider the rights of due process, for example, apply to everybody regardless, period, no exceptions. And so here we see a beginning of that way of thinking in a world where blood vengeance is not a right to due process. And so now here there's building a right to due process into the system that doesn't know how to do that. And so that's what's going on here. And so just kind of have that in your head. And it's helpful when you're reading the text of the Bible to sort of get that. So I've been thinking about Romans chapter 7, actually. Romans 7, Paul is talking, and he writes this section, it's the second half of Romans 7. And it's interesting because he's talking about what we use in most translations using the word sin. He's talking about sin, and he talks about it like it's a personified force. He says, I don't get it. I'm trying to do what's right, and this sin seems to be producing something else, right? Why am I doing the wrong thing when I want to do the right thing? What is going on here? He says, clearly, is that me or is it the sin dwelling in me? Who's going to save me from this deathly existence? It's a great section to read. And when you read it, I promise you, the first thing you're going to think about is your temptations with, chocolate brownies or whatever it is, right? You know how that works? You're like, I need to stop eating the chocolate brownies. No more chocolate brownies. 2 days later, I'm craving chocolate brownies. I'm going to make a pan. I'm going to eat one and freeze the rest. And then they're getting dry. I better finish them. Right? And that can apply to anything. So when folks who are dealing with addictions read that, they're like, oh my goodness, I can substitute the word alcoholism for that, or addiction for that, or whatever, and because that's that experience. But that reading is also a very personal reading. And it's important for us to remember that the Bible isn't really, or is very rarely spoken to individuals. It's actually written to peoples. So when you think about it as peoples, it starts to take a bigger picture. And I've been thinking about that because I'm working on a funeral right now. I spent yesterday talking to all kinds of folks. I have a funeral later this week. And I've done a lot of funerals. Most of them have gone well, but there have been a few. Sometimes I've had this situation where I've done a funeral, a family asks me to come in and do a funeral, and I do it, and the family is so appreciative. Because I don't know if you've ever, part of my job when doing a funeral is to tell the truth as best I can, and to center that person's life within the grace and love of God. But it has to be honest. You can't just go, they were a wonderful human being if they weren't. You have to really address. It's like if somebody commits suicide, or if somebody dies from a drug overdose because they were dealing with an addiction. Guess what the first thing I'm going to talk about is? The suicide or the drug overdose. The very thing you got to, and part of it's psychological. If somebody's died from a suicide and I don't talk about it right away, that's all people are thinking of the whole time, how they died, right? So we put it out there, speak to it, and keep going. That also means that when I'm dealing with folks who are like, don't talk about this, I'm saying, I've said this to people before. I said, listen, if this is, I put this first and I will talk about it. So if you're not comfortable with that, and I'll explain why, the rationale. I said, but if you're not comfortable with that, then you need to find somebody else, because this is the truth that has to be spoken. And this is what I'll say. And once they hear, most of the time they hear my explanation, they're like, okay, yeah, I get that. But so I can do a funeral where the family's just, oh, thank you so much. And then another group of people who are part of that individual's life are upset and angry with me, because their story about that person is very, very different. They didn't know this other piece, or maybe they knew it, but they discounted it. The person who died of a drug overdose, and the family is like, yes, address that. We need to get that out there. And then the friends who are like, but he was such a fun guy. And then at the graveside are like toasting and pouring a bottle of whiskey on top of the casket after we've done the words of, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Apparently it's ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and a healthy dose of whiskey. How can that be? That's the same funeral. I've also had some funerals where I'm doing the very best I can, and oh my goodness, what a disaster. 2 days later, somebody in my office going, how could you do that? I'm like, sorry, right? I preach sermons, literally preach sermons, where someone has come to me afterwards, and they were like, oh, thank you so much. This is such a blessing for me. I'm so grateful. And then someone else has been like, that was really, and they end up leaving the church. How can the same sermon hurt one person and bless another? The same thing causes good and harm? What is going on here? Well, Paul's answer is it's the brokenness in the world. It's sin, this thing, this whatever this dysfunction is of our world is what's going on. There's a lot of stuff like that in the world. So let's be honest. As we go through life, it is rare for any of us. I hope this is true of you. If it's not, you need to work on yourself. It is rare for any of us to intentionally hurt somebody. If you find yourself getting angry and saying mean things because you want to kind of dig the person that you're angry with, you need to fix that. That's a thing that needs to be addressed and fixed. But sometimes we say stuff and it hurts people, and we didn't even know we did it. Sometimes we'll do things that we're not even trying to be careless, they just hurt people. And so how do we even live, for crying out loud? How do we do what we're supposed to do? It's easy to decide, I'm just going to stay away. I'm not going to do anything, because to do something, the risk is too great of hurting people, and I just don't want to do that. But then think of all the people who are hurt by the fact that we didn't do something, that we didn't bring the blessing. So what do we do with that? How do we face that? And the answer is we need grace. We need a city of refuge, because in those injuries, those are truly the unintended injuries, no premeditation. Those are the things that happen that were the opposite of what we're trying to do. And so there are no more cities of refuge. So where do we flee? Well, we flee to the cross. We flee to Jesus. We run. We run and take our refuge in him. Can you find the prayer of response? I never meant for that to happen. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was only trying to help. It's not my fault. I'm not to blame. It was an accident. No one could have possibly anticipated this outcome. This is my defense, my objection as the consequences of my choices crash down upon me. The blood avenger comes for me, and I have no place to hide. So I will run to the city of refuge, run to your grace, run to your mercy, run toward the cross, and find my safety there. Save me, Lord Jesus, save me. Amen.
We hope you can join us for regular worship, 8:30 Sunday mornings at Christ United Methodist Church, and 10:15 Sunday mornings at Stanton United Methodist Church. And if Sunday is not your jam, join us for Pizza Church Monday nights at 6 o'clock at Christ United Methodist Church. Until next time, may the Lord God bless you and keep you. May the face of the Almighty be upon you, and may God grant you peace.
I'm gonna run to the city of refuge. I'm gonna